Now that I've played the Breach rework in multiple leagues, first the original Keepers, then Pohx Refresh and now Phrecia, and experienced all aspects of the new mechanic multiple times, I feel the Breach rework wasn't great, but must go core anyway. I don't really see another way, as I will argue in this video. I'll go over why, which aspects I think work, which don't, plus I will predict per Breach aspect what is going to happen with Breach going forward. The footage isn't matching the voiceover, by the way, and clearly this is just speculation and my own opinion. Let's dive in. I'm starting with lore. Each section I will split up into design and execution, although you could argue that when it comes to lore that is maybe not that applicable, but okay. Something can be well designed but poorly executed. Or I guess vice versa, but that is pretty rare. At the lore, I'm not exactly an expert, but Breach 2.0 was meant to close the narrative gap between our adventures in Path of Exile 2, where all of a sudden Xesht has appeared and all the other Breach Lords were gone, and Path of Exile 1, where we have 4 Breach Lords but no Xesht. How did we get to the PoE 2 situation? And I think Breach 2.0 did a decent job in at least partly explaining that, with Chayula, the Dreamer, the New Order, 2 bosses that are on the brink of merging. Those are all pros, and the twist with Aelith at the end after you unlock the entire tree and kill the 2 new Breach bosses, I think that was quite satisfying and unexpected as well, I felt. Another part of the lore was that the Breach monsters have started creating hives in Rayclast, the structures that they live in. I think it's cool that you see those in the map and that they match whatever you see in Path of Exile 2, but the lore got in the way of gameplay because the walls of those hive structures were real walls, messing up map traversal and all sorts of other league mechanics. Other league mechanics like Blight that were never supposed to have a bunch of walls in there. Lore should never negatively impact gameplay, but here it unfortunately did. Technically, we have 4 Breach encounters, but I'm going to cover 3 of them first and then the 4th, the Breach bosses, the Hive colony, in a separate section. In terms of design, I understand the wish to have some variety, so rather than creating a single Breach encounter like we used to have, they made multiple. That makes sense and could be interesting, especially if those 3 encounters would offer different results, which to some extent they did. The original Breach encounter, I will call it, where the Breach just opens and then stabilizes, it could spawn Rune, and Rune in turn would drop new Breach rings, providing a unique reward for this event. The execution on this Breach event was pretty okay too, I felt. It was basically old Breach and there was nothing wrong with old Breach, which begs the question, why rework it? But hey. The Hive Fortress has several chests inside with foulborn uniques, which I think was also a decent design. It was your first chance to look inside a hive structure in PoE 1, and this was much in line with Breach structures in PoE 2, closing that narrative gap as well. And the idea of closing and collapsing the structure, attracting waves of monsters, which you then must fend off, I think that works on paper at least. In practice, on the level of execution, 24 waves, I mean, it is a bit much. You get good rewards, but sitting there for 24 waves, it is incredibly boring, especially once you had a build, like I did with SRS Guardian, that would just kill all the waves and then all that is left is to run out and escape the thing. It wasn't exactly engaging until the very end, it was very repetitive, it was rewarding after the buff, so there is that, but ultimately I would rather do pretty much any other league mechanic instead except Ultimatum. And again, I think the old Breach was much better in that regard. The in-map event, so this is the 3rd event, where you had monsters rushing in and you needed to defend Aelith, had nothing going for it in terms of design, and as a result was also the most boring out of the 3 in practice, and one that I started skipping pretty soon. Plus, this one had all of the walls, which were simply terrible. I think this event will be entirely deleted in future patches, assuming Breach events go core. The Breach encounters, which are the basis for pretty much everything else in Breach 2.0, were so poorly executed and rather poorly received that they are the main reason I feel Breach 2.0 wasn't a success. It starts and ends with the combat mechanics, the Breach mechanics, and if these are not fun, it almost doesn't matter what else gets introduced. Ironically, everything else that got introduced was rather good, but the gameplay you had to endure to engage with the rest of Breach, meaning the Breach events that I just discussed, those were quite terrible in my opinion. I do think, to some extent, this is salvageable. In terms of improvements, I expect the Atlas passive tree to get renewed Breach nodes, so maybe that'll be a way to deterministically block certain aspects of Breach. Plus, I also think there will be nodes that reduce the number of waves, for example, in the hive structures. I expect the wall Breach event in maps to disappear entirely, and maybe they will just make the monsters spawn a bit faster in general. And hopefully they just remove all the walls. I get it from a lore perspective, but it is way too intrusive and messes up so many other things in maps that the downsides are too vast to have these remain in the game. Either way, Breach will be available next league, it has to be kind of, right? I can't imagine they'll take it out entirely, and I can't imagine them reverting back to old Breach, so at the very least it will be the event with Rune in it, and then everything else is probably up for debate, which won't stop me from making a few predictions. The Hive Colony is technically the 4th Breach event, as it spawns in maps either randomly or because you put in a Hive Brain gland. No matter which map you put it in though, the Hive Colony is always level 83. It holds a few chests and 2 bosses, Ash and Tool. In terms of design, I think quite good, nothing super special, just a small hive structure, a cool boss fight and a sensible amount of lore to it as well. In terms of execution, mostly good, I would say. One thing I didn't like was that on death you had to walk all the way back, as for some reason you couldn't place a portal inside the Hive Colony. Seems like an easy fix, but okay, that fix never happened. The boss fight was interesting, it was well executed, quite easy in a normal league, quite impossible in Phrecia league, and I think the balance should be somewhere in the middle. Maybe we'll get an Atlas node that has the map mods applied to the Hive Colony, that would be great, similar to how map mods in Path of Exile 2 can now apply to underground abyss areas. And of course, these bosses dropped several interesting build enabling uniques, so overall I think this is a success. It doesn't need many fixes, only the portal as far as I'm concerned. The Hive Brain can be a drop from any Breach event in a future patch, and of course we need the bloodline to remain in the game, so these bosses I think will have to stay, right, one way or another. I can't imagine the devs would take them out. Talking about the bosses, this brings me to the uniques and the foulborn uniques. The uniques dropping from Ash and Tool, including a bunch of unique rings, I think that is excellent design and excellent execution. Breach rings for some reason are part of the lore, so it makes sense that bosses drop unique strong versions. I don't think foulborn uniques make all that much sense in the context of Breach, and I feel the devs didn't feel that strongly about it either, because in Path of Exile 2 we have foulborn uniques as well, but under a different name, and they got nothing to do with Breach anymore, but now are part of the Val. So the lore doesn't really make sense, at least to me, but the design of these uniques and the whole concept of a foulborn unique, it is nothing short of genius. Sure, plenty of foulborn uniques were not impactful, but just give it time. There will be a moment in the future where a seemingly useless foulborn unique will be build enabling. This happens all the time for regular uniques as well. The idea of changing affixes with new ones and make that its own category of uniques is a solid idea and well executed. We got hundreds, I think, of foulborn uniques. I've played around with several of them, quite a few can be build enabling, and several others are just generically strong or solve a very specific issue. I love that about Path of Exile, that such items exist, and we suddenly now have many more of those added to the toolbox of potential solutions for build issues. I can see some foulborn uniques being nerfed or removed entirely, like the Explodey ring, but you know, or made super rare like a T1 unique. But I'm convinced foulborn uniques are here to stay for several reasons. First, they don't need to be tied to Breach at all, as PoE2 proves. Second, a lot of work went into changing these uniques, which typically means that they stay in the core game. And third, it is a nice category to expand on for later patches, and an original way to fix outdated uniques without reworking the original uniques. So it has a massive upside for future state game design. In future patches, it's easy to also add like 10 more foulborn uniques, and people will be happy to see them. Because of this, I think we will enjoy foulborn uniques in the next patch as well, minus maybe a few broken ones. I'm slowly working my way to the most controversial element of the video, but first, there is one more mechanic that was introduced, grafts. In terms of design, I think these grafts make a lot of sense. They have a lore function, breaking down the walls. Don't ask me why, but Aelith tells you to do this. They hold the graft blood that you gathered, and they serve a combat function, adding a layer of defense, offense, or utility, or all of those combined, and that is cool. They are a multi-purpose tool from a design perspective, and I think that is good design. In terms of execution, also pretty good, right? They were well balanced overall. You could get ridiculously tanky with them, sure, but the addition of grafts hasn't broken the game in any way to my knowledge. It's just made building your character a bit easier and a bit more fun in my view. And I think that is all you can ask for a small thing like this, so I'm quite positive about grafts. Also, the way you craft the grafts, using the currency from the tree, I felt that worked well. This currency could drop from anywhere really in a future patch, in a breach event for example, if the grafts would remain in the game. But will they? I don't think so. Not because they're broken, but because of a few other reasons. I think the added value of grafts is minimal, while it does bloat the game, so for that reason I think GGG rather gets rid of them after this patch than keep them in. I think we won't have walls anymore, so they aren't needed anymore to break walls. I think we may not have graft blood, and if that is true they won't be needed for that either. And I do think they made getting defensive buffs, endurance charges and other utility a bit too easy from the developer's standpoint. So for all of those reasons, I think we won't be seeing them again. And talking about things we won't be seeing again, let's talk about the crafting tree. First, design. I think great, really. Very good design. It is intuitive, it is simple, it doesn't have a gazillion options, it's deterministic. This is great for people who are not that good at crafting. People like me. Mark and Jonathan mentioned as much in the announcement Q&A with Siggy D before the league started. All three were big fans of the tree. I think 2/3 of those people may be less of a fan now that the league is almost over, however. But still, I want to give them full credit for the design, for not going overboard, for containing several options in a single tree, and for not creating more UI issues like Halcyonish pointed out in her great video. I think this tree, compared to the temple that she takes as an example for this in PoE2, is a decent example of how an at least decent UI leads to an enjoyable, understandable mechanic. For better or worse, this really is one of the better user interfaces that Path of Exile has to offer. Then, execution. Assuming the execution follows the design, which it should, right? It is well executed, isn't it? The UI, that is part of the execution, I would argue. The cost of items was fairly balanced. You got a good number of items from the tree. Getting the graft blood using breach event wasn't fun, but crafting using the tree was a lot of fun. However, and you may not expect me to say this as an SSF enjoyer, but after using the tree for at least 5 fresh new playthroughs, I can't deny that it is way too powerful even for solo self-found. Even if you entirely ignore the impact of the tree on the economy, if you just focus on getting your build up and running and getting gear, I think that even in that SSF context, this tree is completely and utterly broken. And I am here specifically talking about the part of the tree that does provisioning, right? With the provisioning womb grafts, the part that crafts you your regular gear. The main reason isn't because it is too easy to get good gear. If this thing would just create good gear, I think it can stay in the game as is. But it doesn't just create good gear, it creates 6-linked armor with 5 tier 1 and a tier 2 affix on a high level base with affixes of your choosing, one of them being fractured. And if this would occur only a few times per league, like it did in Necropolis, where you first had to get 88 specific corpses to do such a craft, then maybe it would be balanced. It would be terrible to interact with. Playing Necropolis made me want to be one of those 88 corpses, but you could argue it was at least balanced for what you got. But if you can craft multiple of these pieces after grinding the game for just an hour, then there is something wrong. And I feel that is the main issue. I think the tree would be fine if it did 2 out of those 4 things. If it created 6 links on a decent base item, or if it created high tier affixes, some of which you can choose on a random base, without 6 linking it. Or if it created a fractured high tier affix that you could pick on a decent base. In short, if it would create base items for further crafting, then I think it would be reasonably balanced. But it does all of the above at once on a single item, making it a god tier item for anyone that isn't a mirror tier crafter, so for at least any SSF player pretty much. I think that was detrimental in a few ways. First, players get geared way faster, and that is not always a good thing. Sometimes it is better if gearing is a bit more of a gradual process, so you still have something to play and grind for, an upgrade to look forward to. That whole sense of progression is however destroyed by the tree, because I know I will get a really good piece of gear from it, which is in fact so good that there's basically no way any other league mechanic in SSF is going to provide an upgrade anymore. Which then begs the question, why would I keep farming for more? Why would I spend tons and tons of hours on a very small incremental upgrade in terms of gear, where this tree is just gonna give me basically the holy grail straight away as long as I do some breach events. The breach events themselves, I'm sure they didn't help for retention because I think they were quite boring, but the pace at which we got basically perfect items from the tree I'm sure also didn't help retention. Which brings me to the second detrimental aspect of the current implementation of the tree. Other league mechanics that previously had value in crafting gear are for the most part obsolete. I have barely used fossils or essences or even harvest crafting this league because I got perfect gear from the tree. You craft a minion wand still with fossils, sure, but other characters I geared entirely using the tree. Weapons, armor, jewelry, a foulborn unique maybe, and done. And that became quite boring after a while. The whole point of playing SSF for me is that you have to interact with different aspects of the game because they offer different ways to upgrade your character, and all of those different ways are quite balanced. Even for trade, this is true because people enjoying Delve can just do that and sell the fossils because fossils are always needed for certain crafts. Same with essences or harvest juice. But if there is one mechanic in the game that takes care of 90 or 95% of all gear pieces, then there's no reason or very few reasons to play other content or use other crafting mechanics which need other crafting materials, and that is not a good thing. It is bad in SSF because the beauty of SSF is that you must engage with the entire game, and it is bad for trade because those enjoying Delve, as an example, now have a much harder time making currency as the demand for those fossils plummets. And I'm just giving an example for trade. Maybe Delve is really good this league, but I think you get the point. So for that reason, I'm sure the provisioning part of the tree, the branch with the provisioning womb gifts, the one that creates all these perfect gear pieces, will not be going core. I think GGG will either remove the entire provisioning branch or a bunch of nodes so it is less deterministic, but there is no way that it remains as is. That said, there are also other branches of the tree. I expect grafts to go, so the branch that lets you craft those will disappear as well then. But the currency tree, that is probably fine. It's a bit generic but not offensive or broken in any way. More interestingly, I think the foulborn unique branch has to stay as well as a source for those items, especially if the devs decide to remove the unpopular Hive Fortress. Then this is the only remaining source of foulborn uniques if you don't count the chests in a hive colony. And maybe this is what Breach 2.0 will boil down to in terms of the tree in the next patch, only the foulborns. They could of course make foulborn uniques part of the core drop pool of uniques, but I think that would be a bad idea, then it completely dilutes the idea of Breach and foulborn. Getting back to the tree, to me at least, I think it would make a lot of sense if the tree remains and still accepts graft blood, which we collect either via grafts or just via a vial or something, but it only has the foulborn branch in it. It would only be a foulborn unique creating tree. It would be on theme. Foulborn is still tied to Breach after all in PoE 1. It would fix the game's balance, and the devs would avoid another harvest disaster with endless reworks and whatnot. Just delete the provisioning branch. Everyone understands and expects that to happen anyway. Anyone playing the game at least can see how ridiculous and how strong that thing is. And just keep it a nice small little tree with foulborn uniques. You then perhaps can suffice with finding only a few upgrades for growing the tree, or maybe none at all, and just let it naturally expand by using it. I think that is even better. And then you have a nice confined league mechanic, Breach 2.0, with hopefully only the event that opens and stabilizes. You get your blood, you get your foulborns occasionally from the tree, you give Breach that flavor of Breach uniques, Breach rings and foulborn uniques. I think that would be excellent. We'll get our 6 links from other places. I have a decent video about a bunch of ways you can get a 6 link in SSF. I will link that in the description. hopefully after all my arguments you can see why I think Breach 2.0 really wasn't all that great, but will go core anyway. It might not go core straight away, maybe we'll get the mercenary treatment where it is going to be out of the game for a little bit and then make a return, but Path of Exile without Breach, I don't think that will happen, so I do feel next league it goes core. I mean, what else are they going to do with the bloodline, right? That thing is still in there. But it will go core in a slimmed down version, with a slimmed down tree, no more grafts, only one in-map event with Vroon, and then the hive colony with several Atlas passive nodes to give you some agency over the mechanic, and I think that is going to be it. At least until they figure out something better, which may or may never happen. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the matter. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more PoE content. I make long-form edited 0-to-hero playthroughs as well as some commentary here and there like this video. I hope you enjoyed this one, so I'll see you soon. Love you all. Bye bye.